Alright. Hello everyone, welcome back to the school podcast. Mr Kendell's here today.
Hi everyone.
Tell us about yourself, Mr Kendell.
So I'm a teacher here at St Mark's. I teach mostly Humanities and Social Sciences. In senior school I specialise in modern history and philosophy and ethics. Also about 20% of my teaching load is Christian studies, which I also teach here at the school. What else do you want to know?
Which one do you prefer more actually? History or philosophy?
I mean, I do love both. I majored in the two of them at university, but I guess history is kind of my first love. Philosophy was something I sort of discovered along the way as I started uni, and yeah, while it's something that I really love, I think I'll probably always come back to history first of all. Modern, that is, a bit of medieval as well. Ancient's not really my bag.
Why not? What's wrong with ancient?
Content-wise, I like ancient, but it's kind of the way that you study it. You've got to read all these enormous tomes of text by
in
these...
the Old English and...
Well, not necessarily. It's often like... they're often modern translations, but just these dense texts from these old, dead Greek guys. Where you've also got to sort out kind of the myth from the history and stuff like that, which is a really interesting process, but just not really my thing. Yeah, tried it at uni. Didn't quite work.
So do you have any hobbies outside of teaching? Or...
Hobbies. When I hear someone ask about hobbies, I always just think of like stamp collecting and stuff. Which actually I did in primary school, but it's been many years since I've been involved in philately, which is stamp collecting.
Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called, or something along those lines. Like I say, it's been a while.
I didn't know it had a name.
There you go, the more you know. I don't know about hobbies so much, but I certainly have like a number of interests. Kind of music is a big one, although, music in my school years kind of beat out the love of playing music for me, mostly as appreciation now. Kind of TV and cinema as well are pretty big for me. Craft beer, am I allowed to say that on the school podcast? But yeah.
So you craft your own?
I do not. I just, I guess in most of my interests, I'm really an appreciator rather than a creator. Okay. I guess that's an easy job to do because then you can critique and praise, but also give you kind of negative feedback as well without ever having to put your money where your mouth is as well. Similarly, like that. Like it is for music, I guess.
So were these two subjects your favourite subjects at school?
Philosophy wasn't a course at school when I went through school. So it became a course while I was at uni. I really liked history at school, but I did a wide range of subjects, and it kind of took my first year at uni to figure out what I really liked and really didn't. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I ended up doing like a pretty different sort of course. And then it was sort of over the course of my first year that I then decided, hey, the arts part of this, history I was doing at the time is where I wanted to invest, whereas the other stuff I was studying, not so much. It was along the way that I really discovered philosophy, I guess, because I think I first encountered it at like the UWA Open Day. And as soon as I was talking to some of the lecturers and tutors there and finding out about what we'd be looking at, I was like, it had me straight away, and I knew it was something that I wanted to look into a bit more and pursue, and it ended up being something I really loved, both at uni and beyond too.
Who's the funniest humanities teacher? That's what I want to know.
Oh, funniest humanities teacher. It's a bit tough, I think.
Is it you?
I don't know if that's the case. I don't think you can really judge kind of yourself kind of very accurately, perhaps. You're either going to be prone to pride or kind of like denigrating yourself, I guess. I think good banter in the office, Mrs. Bamford, definitely. Very good, very funny in that regard. But in terms of telling jokes, she is definitely not near the top of that list. So with that, I don't know, Mr. Lehman's kind of up there as well. Ms. Bacalus is good value as well, although that's mostly me winding her up. But the humanities department here at St Mark's is brilliant, I think. No worries, Mr. Lehman, you can pay me later. But no, like quite seriously, I think they are, and that's a source of great enjoyment in my job is working with them. kind of from a professional standpoint, but also like a personal one as well. So, yeah.
Got some more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I gotta say something.
Yeah.
Wait.
If you can read my handwriting, that is.
Bruce Haynes. Yeah, I can read it.
You can
I
read
read
it?
your handwriting. Yeah, I'm gonna do it right now.
Alright. Fire
okay,
away.
Wait, could you tell me what that means?
Which one? This one?
Yeah,
or
the whole
Does
question.
this stuff get edited out?
no.
Maybe.
This one? What's
yeah,
next for Mr. Kendell?
Oh, what's next for
Okay.
Mr. Kendell?
Oh, what's next?
Yeah.
Like in terms of life plans.
Yeah, I guess.
Um,
Do you always see yourself
I
as
don't
a
know.
teacher, or like this role, or do you see yourself becoming like a
yeah.
head of department or something, or
Professor.
I mean, I've
Professor.
definitely committed to kind of being here at St Mark's in a similar role, at least until my pastoral care group finishes. Then yeah, I'm not really sure. Like anything's up for grabs. Like I really enjoy teaching. I think it was pretty tough the first couple of years, but now just really enjoy it. But I don't know. Like I'm definitely interested in perhaps some other kind of experiences as well, and I really don't know. So whether that means staying on at St Mark's, or whether that means going to another school just for different experiences.
Yeah.
I've really loved my time at St Mark's, and the school's been really good to me. Or whether that means going into other sorts of work. I've thought about sort of doing Christian work before as well. I'm not really sure whether that's something that will end up happening. Yeah, don't know. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to say to your form right now?
Sure, I can give him a quick shout
So they're
out.
probably listening.
I guess, yeah. So a quick shout out to Watkins 11.1. I mean, no offense to any other pastoral care groups in the school, but I honestly think that they're the best. I've really loved having them ever since year 7. They're a really great bunch of kids or young adults, really, and I think that I think they're doing a much better job of making their way through life at their age than I was at theirs, I think. So yeah, big fans of you guys. Keep it up.
What were you doing at their age then?
What was I doing at their age?
Can you not disclose that
year
information?
11. No, I think I can disclose at least like a bit.
Yeah.
In that, I think for me, high school was like a bit of an interesting experience. My first few years at high school, definitely, I think I didn't really know who I was, I guess, and I was really grappling with almost like an identity crisis, or that sounds a bit pretentious perhaps. And that, I think, that came out in a bunch of different ways, most of which were pretty negative. So I often tried to establish my own kind of feelings of self-worth and stuff at the expense of other people, and stuff like that. So not very proud of a lot of the ways that I acted as a high school student, for a lot of that time. Similarly as well, I guess, when that's the case, you're wanting to strive for acceptance in different ways, and to establish yourself in different ways, which means that I tried different things and got involved in different things that I don't partake in now. I mean, like, I'm happy to talk about it because that's part of my lived experience, and I think it's something that a lot of people kind of share as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was me. So that changed a lot for me in year 12. I think, got a much more of a grounding in terms of who I was and stuff. And I like to think that I'm a much better kind of person now than I was then. But yeah, it's kind of exciting then having a pastoral care group, and while they of course grapple with all sorts of different things, seeing that they're probably making their way through their high school years a bit better than I did, at least on the most part. So
Good to hear.
yeah.
All right, yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I notice you're rocking quite the beard there.
Oh yeah, sure.
The strapping bit. Is that all natural, or is it any products being used?
As in, do I have hair implants in my face
No,
or something like that?
I don't know much because I don't use any products myself.
Okay.
But
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it is all natural. I've kind of had the beard for maybe it must be getting close to 2 years now. I do use
2 years without shaving.
Without being clean shaven, I have to trim it quite regularly.
Yeah.
It gets trimmed pretty regularly, and then that's just me doing a dodgy job in my own bathroom. So the barber kind of does a bit of a better job whenever I get a haircut.
Yeah.
Product wise, I use a little bit of beard balm. That's not as exciting as it sounds. It's basically just it's like an oily paste that you kind of use to kind of condition your beard a little bit, as well as to sort of stop it from being just sticking out all over the place. So yeah, not much there. Nothing to kind of deliberately stimulate growth or anything, if that's what you're after.
Do you think
Roman,
Year 12 students should be allowed to have beards?
Oof. I don't want to go into contentious territory when it comes to uniform rules, or anything like that. I think, for me personally, I think like a uniform is an important part of how a school operates, and I think whatever the uniform expectations are, then they ought to be upheld. I think that's part of the good functioning of a school. But as for me personally, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on what the uniform is and what those expectations are, if that makes sense. So I guess I'm going to take a pass on whether I think Year 12 should be able to grow beards, just because I don't know if that's the important question to ask uniform-wise. That could change, and I'd be like, yeah, that's cool, that doesn't bother me, and I'll enforce whatever the new rule is on that. But it could say the same, and I'll still enforce that rule. I don't really have an opinion on the beards themselves.
Okay.
I take it that is the case, Roman, because during one of your exams last week, I saw you were rocking something that looks a little bit like Walter White there, perhaps, with a goatee. In fact, actually, I actually put a note on Sector about your facial hair, Roman. I'm sorry to confess that to you right now, and that might change the course of this podcast episode. And I believe I described it as Walter White-esque in that note, which I don't think is really the convention that we're supposed to use, but there you go.
I think it's...
I was going to do a segue, because speaking of TV shows, The Office,
yeah.
you're quite a fan, I believe.
Should we do the asking thing first?
What asking?
For the ideas?
Oh, we should actually. Okay, but before that, okay.
So we have a request from you, the audience.
You listeners, yeah.
The listeners, which is you, listening. Zero to Hero Day is coming up. Are you excited, Mr. Kendell, for Zero to Hero Day?
It'll be my first experience with Zero to Hero Day, so I'm not really sure what to expect, but I think anything that we're investing in that is promoting good mental health is at least worth a good shot. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, me and Roman have to dress up, and we were wondering what you think we should dress up as, because me and Roman have no clue, basically.
Yeah.
We're struggling here.
We have to give a speech for Zero to Hero Day, so it has to be really good.
Yeah.
So we're stuck for ideas, and we're asking you, the
audience,
to help us out. It has to be like a double thing. So maybe.
I mean, it doesn't have to be,
Oh,
but it'd be
doesn't
nice
have
if
to
it
be.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you
Okay.
think, Mr. Kendell?
I did just have an idea there, actually. Damien.
Yes.
Or it could be Roman, I guess, like either of you. I know this probably isn't really kosher in terms of school's uniform rules. Are you open to shaving your head?
Like all my hair off.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that last year.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, so
yes?
no, I mean, not really.
Because I'm getting like a maybe between the two of you, if we had like a Mr. Rogers and a Mr. Andrews as your pastoral care tutors, I feel like that'd be brilliant. So whoever goes to Mr. Rogers, you have to shave the head, maybe a bit of a beard, and then I think definitely a waistcoat and bow tie. But yeah.
That's a tough one, because
Just buy a bowl cap and just put it over your
I
head.
could do that.
Because you wouldn't get as cleanly shaved if you
Oh
shaved
yeah, that's
it.
true. You could wear a
Roman's
skull
probably
cap.
better at growing a beard than I am, but he looks more like
But you
Mr.
could just wear like a
Andrews
fake one.
Oh, yeah.
And like Mr. Andrews, then you could just get some of those like tattoo sleeves from like Red Dot or something and chuck those on.
That's actually pretty good.
That's a good idea. I mean, we would probably need the approval, right? Well,
Yeah,
to
I
dress up
presume
as.
so.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, apologies in advance, Mr. Rogers and Mr. Andrews, if this goes through and you're not so keen on it.
Whatever.
Because we haven't been told what like the restraint of dressing up is.
No, we haven't.
Like I don't even know is this like a full day like thing?
Yeah, I believe it's a full day. So it's a hero or someone who inspires you. And I think basically the rules are just, needs to be within the bounds of what would usually be acceptable for like school free dress.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know. I guess it would be good to ask their permission at least.
We could definitely consider it,
Yeah.
yeah.
we had one idea where we could get a bunch of friends to dress up as different Nicolas Cage characters. So we're all Nicolas Cage.
Does Nicolas Cage inspire you?
Yes, he does.
Okay, alright.
Pretty funny.
Well, you got the guy from National Treasure. You got Nick Cage from the Face Off movie. You got, who else do you have? The Con Air Nick Cage.
What's the one where he knows what's going to happen before it happens? Like, you know how he's running away from the police or something, and then he's
Minority Report. No.
That's with Tom Cruise.
Yeah, that's.
Can't say I'm a great
he did
Nick
a lot
Cage
of
sort
sort
of
of
connoisseur of Nick Cage films. So
he did a lot of films that went straight to DVD, so it's kind of hard.
That's
it's always a good sign.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So The Office.
Yeah.
We're all cut from the same cloth here, in that we both enjoy it.
Yeah, I do really love The Office. Yeah.
So what are some of your favourite episodes?
Oh, favourite episodes. Dwight Christmas is up there. You know, like, never fear, Belsnickel is here. Oh, no, sorry, cheer off here, Belsnickel is
I don't
here.
remember that one.
Oh, well, it's, you know, there's always a Christmas party. In fact, I love most of the Christmas episodes. They're great. Moroccan Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
The one where kind of Michael buys the iPod for Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff. But, so, Dwight Christmas, Dwight wants to run, like, a traditional Pennsylvanian German Christmas. And everyone, of course, you know, objects to it. But Jim kind of gets behind it, and they relent, and he's able to run it. And he dresses up as sort of this Santa substitute from this Pennsylvania Dutch tradition or whatever it is called Belsnickel, and you know, he judges everyone in the office to be admirable or impish. Brilliant. It's just got so many great, like, Dwight gags. I love that one. What else? I mean, there's so many favorites. The one with the fire. Kind of emergency, you know,
that one's a classic.
Yeah, and you just got, like, Oscar climbing up into the roof, and then Angela's like, "Save Bandit!" and then Bandit crashes through the roof, and
because it starts off with them explaining what to do during a fire and no one's listening, and then they go straight into the gag of actually doing the fire.
Yeah, Dwight sort of then decides to test out the protocols.
Him going up to the camera and be like, "Today we're going to have a test fire run," but then actually just starts a fire. It just makes that just so much more great.
Yeah, so many good episodes. Like, anything with Kevin involved. Kevin is such an underrated character in The Office. The other thing is, I'm a sucker for the romance narrative between Jim and Pam.
So am I, yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people think that that's what actually takes away from the American Office. In that's like, having that sort of narrative really moves away from the cringe humour of the British Office.
Yeah.
But I feel like you've almost got to consider them as different shows, and that was a move that I think made the show much better for an American audience. And, you know, as Philistine-like as it sounds like, one of the things that I love about the show. The Office as well has a bit of a special place in the relationship between my wife and myself, in that we watched our way through the entire series while we were dating. And so, I guess, you know, kind of the Jim and Pam thing pulls at the heartstrings a bit. Not that we're like Jim and Pam, definitely not.
Yeah.
But, you know.
I mean, when they got married, like, the show kind of dipped for me.
Yeah, I mean,
the romance kind of died.
Yeah, I guess, like, that kind of lost that sort of main narrative. But I think the biggest kind of impact on the quality of the show is when Steve Carell leaves, and the character of Michael Scott leaves.
Yeah.
So I'm not a huge fan of the first season, actually. I think the first season tries too hard to replicate the British Office.
Yeah.
And it comes into its own in really the second season, when clearly the writers, and I think the actors as well, had a bit more freedom in terms of adapting the show to an American audience and crafting their own show. But I think it dips as well, significantly, after Michael leaves, and it goes through this real lull. But don't give up on The Office after Michael leaves, I think, because the last season in particular, while it's not the most stellar work, across that season are scattered, like, some of my favourite episodes of The Office. There's some real gems in there to uncover.
I really like the last episode.
The very last
where they're all,
episode.
like, sitting around the last time in the office, and it's quite sad.
Reminiscing. Yeah, that's nice. I guess the American Office's sentimentality really sets it apart from the British one.
Definitely.
But, you know, I get sucked in by it. Just like, for instance, when Michael kind of leaves, and you've got the whole office there kind of singing the song that they wrote about how long he's worked there.
What's it called?
Some number of minutes.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Yeah, and then the next line is, "That's right, we did the math."
Yeah.
And they say math because they're American and they think it's a singular noun for some bizarre reason.
Is it not?
Sorry?
Is it not?
Oh no, mathematics. It's a plural, like maths. But anyway,
Okay,
that aside,
yeah.
and similarly, another great sentimental moment is when Michael and Holly get engaged. Powerful stuff.
Not as much for me personally, but
yeah.
I thought the Holly character was kind of forced. Because they had
Jan?
Jan,
yeah.
and didn't work out, and then like 2 episodes.
Carol as well was in there,
and then 2 episodes immediately, or like an episode immediately after, then this new girl character comes in. And
sure.
It's like,
forced as in like they put it in for Michael as like, is that what you mean?
I felt like that was like kind of obvious.
I mean, yeah, I guess, but they have to as writers, progress the show.
And I think that's why the Jim and Pam thing was so good, because Pam was engaged when Jim starts to get interested. Just like you're really rooting for Jim to win.
Plus, like, they're really normal people. Like, they don't feel like like a.
Sometimes.
No, they are. Like, they don't feel like a Ross and Rachel, like
owns a beet farm.
I guess like
30
I'm talking about Jim and Pam.
But I guess like sitcoms, like generally speaking, like good characters are ones that are relatable because they feel real enough and you can identify sort of parts of yourself in them, but also like exaggerated enough and ridiculous enough to set up that sort of comedy. I mean, my favorite TV show of all time actually is Seinfeld. And I feel like in each of the kind of 4 main characters there, as much as I hate to admit it, especially when it comes to like George, you see bits of yourself in them,
You do,
but they kind of take it to this ridiculous extent as well. So,
I mean, that's what the British show didn't do as much as the US. Really.
like character development.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. But I always feel conflicted saying that I prefer the US Office because generally speaking, like British TV comedy is a go-to for me. I really love kind of a lot of great stuff there. Like It Crowd, Black Books, Peep Show, Man Down. There's like lots of really good stuff. But yeah, US Office is where it's at, office-wise, I think.
Yeah. That's one more thing I was going to say.
What's your favourite episode?
Okay, yeah, never mind. What's my favourite episode? Probably one from season 2, because that's when the Jim and Pam relationship was like really heating up for me. So I remember.
Is it still season 2 when like kind of they kind of steal that kiss like the very first time? Or
I think that's the end of season
later.
2, right?
I can't remember.
Yeah, probably. I can't remember, to be honest. It's been a while. But yeah, maybe the Christmas one where Michael buys an iPod for Ryan. Yeah.
Pretty funny.
It's pretty funny. Yeah.
And Jim makes like the really meaningful gift.
For
Yeah,
Who takes
and it gets
it?
passed around.
So,
Wasn't it Dwight who takes
I thought
it?
Toby gets... No, not Toby.
It eventually comes back to Pam. I can't remember who
Yeah.
has it for him, but of course Jim takes the note out.
Yeah.
But it all starts, of course, because Michael's so upset with the gift that he gets, which is an oven mitt that Phyllis knitted for him, which is pretty
Wasn't
sad.
it like a
Poor Phyllis.
$15 things and he buys like a $300 iPod or
Yeah,
something?
exactly. So
My favourite episode is the one where what's the beet farm dude?
Dwight?
Yes.
No, who's his cousin?
Mose. Oh, I love Mose.
I love when Dwight becomes the landowner of the
yeah.
building.
Yeah,
and
he's like stripping the toilet paper down to 1 ply, and
it's like the lights have like a timer, and you're not allowed to put the AC above a certain amount. It's just funny.
Yeah. Oh, Dwight's a good character. And, like, Dwight's a really interesting character as well in terms of character development because he has this great redemptive arc where you end up loving him towards the end, which kind of mirrors his relationship with Jim in a lot of ways in that, you get towards the end, you get to, like, Dwight's wedding and, Dwight's inviting him to be his best man when they were sworn enemies at the start. And similarly, Dwight goes from the person who desperately wants to be manager but you never choose to be manager to being the perfect choice at the end. So, it's perhaps a bit cheesy, but I do like that redemptive arc.
I didn't realise. I didn't make that connection that you just said.
Dwight becomes a perfect
Like,
manager.
yeah, he becomes a perfect manager but at the start. He so desperately wants it, but at the end, like, yeah.
Well, I mean, the first time he's appointed acting manager is a total, like, unmitigated disaster.
Yeah.
Like, he fires a gun off in the office.
Oh, yes.
And, it's basically a totalitarian regime. So.
Yeah. Alright, moving on. There's a bit of, in light of recent events, can we separate the art from the artist? With things such as, Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson, Kevin Spacey. Knowing that they've done these horrible things, should we, or... What's the better question? Can we or should we? Probably should we, yeah.
Yeah, I
should we
guess they're
separate
both
the art
asking.
from the artist?
I think I was most
or are they
apparent
one?
with the Michael Jackson thing, especially with the documentary that came out not that long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that he supposedly did. No
Or
one
allegedly.
can endorse, but man, the dude's got some groovy beats. And no matter what, when I listen to the music, I forget all about it.
Yeah, everyone kind of wants to put on Ignition Remix every now and again,
Yeah.
even though allegations have come out about R. Kelly, of course. I don't know if I have an answer, perhaps, but I think maybe like a few relevant considerations, perhaps. So I think we've got to think about, at least in some cases, what we think the purpose and function of art is in a society. Similarly, I guess, what makes art good or valuable.
Yep.
So at different points in time, people have put forward different ideas about this. One that's been fairly common at different points has been that art should exist to encourage virtue in a society. And so then art and literature kind of, art in the broad sense there, should then encourage kind of good and discourage evil. Or kind of alternatively then, but kind of related, some people have seen art as chiefly being there to promote a certain worldview, such as like a religious tradition. And you see that definitely in terms of the patronage of the arts that takes place in, say, for instance, like the late medieval era, through to the Renaissance and stuff like that. I think in those cases, you ought not, I think, separate the art from the artist, because there seems to be some sort of cognitive dissonance, perhaps, in suggesting that a piece of art can promote virtue, while kind of holding that the artist themselves is vicious in their action. But of course, I mean, those are just some of those answers to those questions. If, for instance, we think that art has a different source of value or plays a different purpose, so maybe expression or demonstration of the creative imagination, or if we think it's about aesthetic properties, then I guess that becomes less of a consideration. Similarly as well, if we think that the value of art and its role is purely subjective, then I guess kind of most things are really up for grabs. I think some other kind of considerations is, I think you need to consider whether you're actually making a meaningful change. Or actually thinking that you're making a meaningful change while sort of avoiding the main issue. So take, for instance, if you kind of refuse to now watch any films that were produced by like the Weinstein company on the basis of Harvey Weinstein's behavior. I mean, systemic sexism just seems to be rife in Hollywood and in the film industry. And I think the danger there is that by sort of boycotting all things Weinstein, you think that you are contributing to solving the problem, when you may actually be kind of ignoring this systemic issue that takes place. I'm not saying that you shouldn't boycott Weinstein or that you should. But I think it's worth considering like whether what you're actually doing is contributing towards making meaningful change, or whether it's purely a symbolic gesture, I guess, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Cool.
But when you appreciate art, it's an emotional response. Like we all agree.
That's at least like one component thereof.
I suppose when you're initially like taking it in, but then if you were to analyze it, it becomes
the
more
experience of the
rational.
sublime. Yeah.
I remember doing that last year. So if it's purely emotional and you can't really help it, therefore we shouldn't really like... Yeah, we can separate the art from the artist, because it's an emotional response. You can't help that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have like an overall position on whether we should separate those two things out.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly I think you can't help your emotional response, but you can still, I don't know, I guess choose what you do on the basis of your emotional response. So, for instance, I may, so for instance, Pablo Picasso, we kind of know as well that he's kind of had his own sort of what we regard to be sexual misconduct, sexual relations with an underage girl, basically. And I think, you look at kind of Picasso's artwork and I think you can marvel at it. And perhaps if you look at his artwork, you can't help but marvel at it. But you can then choose then how much you kind of support his work. I mean, that perhaps is a little bit redundant seeing as he's dead. But if you imagine like another hypothetical. So I think, a big thing is you can sort of vote with your dollars, so to speak. So when I go and see a film, for instance, that kind of stars or is directed by someone who's been accused of a particular type of misconduct, I guess then when I pay my money for that, then the companies that are responsible get what they want out of it. And essentially what I then say is, sure, I may have these kind of principles, but ultimately, my enjoyment's going to win out over those, and you're going to make your money either way. And so it then communicates to those companies that, well, having those sorts of people involved doesn't really matter. So I've kind of drifted away from the question a bit, but I guess what I'm trying to say is you might not be able to control your emotional response, but you can control your kind of action and behavior. And I think that's true in most parts of life as well. So
fair enough. So if you were to say, let's say Adolf Hitler was he was quite the artist, and
he attempted to be quite the artist.
He didn't really quite get into this. But let's say you were.
That being said, like you look at some of his artworks, and
they're not bad.
They're not bad. Yeah, like I was about to say, like perhaps you wouldn't hang them in the Louvre, but like I'd be like, pieces. I couldn't do that, like not by a long shot. So not that I think that's necessarily the mark of the quality of artwork, like whether I could do it or not, but they are more impressive than something I could create.
Yeah, and then if you're looking at them, you can't help but think of of the Holocaust and everything he'd done. So in that sense, you can't really separate the art from the artist in a practical sense.
Is that just because, clearly when we're dealing with the Holocaust, we're dealing with something so incredibly offensive, and something that really captures the human imagination in terms of like the limits of offense, if you like.
Yeah.
And so maybe is it that we can't separate the art from the artist there, and we can otherwise, or just that we have this certain threshold of offense that forces us to make like a decision like that, that for whatever reason, genocide offends me enough to not be able to separate the art from the artist, but the sexual misconduct of a Hollywood producer doesn't offend me enough to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, because Mark Wahlberg was in a gang before he became like Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, right? I'm pretty sure he was.
I'm not the person to ask.
But when you're watching his movies, you're not really bothered by the fact that he did all this gang stuff.
Wait,
can we Google that? Yeah,
let's Google that.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he was.
While you Google that, I guess that's kind of something else I think is worth considering. Is like, when is it appropriate, and do you have opportunity to show forgiveness? In that, I think forgiveness is incredibly virtuous. I think it's one of the most important kind of human actions. Now, there are kind of clearly when someone is, I guess, unrepentant, I guess they're not willing to change, then I'm not going to be signing them up to exhibit in my gallery or show films at my cinema or something like that, neither of which I own. But it seems there ought to be an opportunity for people who have shown a genuine remorse and genuine willingness to change to, make their way back into the art world, perhaps. This is a bit lowbrow, but of course Robert Downey Jr. has had his kind of issues with addiction and stuff in the past. And I remember when he first started making films again, there was a little bit of Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
But now it's just he's Iron Man, and
everyone loves him.
Yeah.
He built up Marvel from what it is.
Yeah, and I'm not saying don't see Robert Downey Jr.'s movies. I think rather instead there ought to be an opportunity where appropriate for forgiveness and restoration and reconciliation. I suppose, but when is that appropriate? When's their opportunity? I don't know. Don't want to necessarily seek to answer that.
Yeah.
And certainly someone who has contributed over a long period of time to systemic problems within an industry, you would have a lot of difficulty trusting again. And I think that's fine and that's healthy. But we don't want to end up with a state of affairs where we bar anyone from any future participation on the basis of some past actions, I guess.
Was it Nietzsche who said, if you're forgiving someone, it makes you weak? Like, I don't know exactly what it means.
That sounds like Nietzsche's kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. Like, I couldn't quote Nietzsche on it, but yeah, certainly that's he subscribed to that general sort of idea, and that's something that I don't agree with. I think forgiveness can actually often be a really courageous and strong thing to do, and part of that is because it does make you vulnerable. But to choose to make yourself vulnerable for the good of others, I think is courageous and commendable. Of course, that needs to be done, appropriately with enough insight and concern for self-preservation, but within certain bounds. To be vulnerable for the good of others, I think is in fact a strong action rather than a weak one.
So is morality your favorite field of philosophy? Or
yeah, I've always really loved ethics.
Yeah.
It's been a particular area of interest of mine. But yeah, I guess I find that my interests philosophy-wise have kind of widened, I guess, a bit over time. So yeah, I also really enjoy different parts of I guess metaphysics. So asking questions about God or gods and the existence thereof.
Yeah.
Questions within certain bounds about our mind. I think like the mind-body problem, I think is fascinating. When you start getting beyond that in the philosophy of mind, I kind of give up, which is something one of my philosophy professors at uni could probably tell you, if she remembered me. I think I wrote her a very forgettable essay.
What was her name? She's probably listening to this.
Her name was Miri Albahari.
Okay.
She was she's pretty interesting sort of lady. So she was a philosophy professor at UWA. She was also a practicing Buddhist. So I did philosophy of mind with her, but also a unit on Eastern and Western philosophy, which was quite interesting.
Yeah.
I really like thinking about free will and determinism as well, which also falls under metaphysics. Different parts of epistemology, there's definitely parts of philosophy that aren't really my thing, but by and large, it's something that I think you're rewarded if you explore.
How about philosophy of friendship?
Philosophy of friendship.
Yeah.
Philosophy of friendship isn't something I really came across before I had to teach it as part of the Year 11 course.
What is it? Can you give us
I remember learning this last year.
What is it?
It's like what is a friend, how to be a good friend.
Yeah, I mean,
that type of stuff.
I think one thing that's really interesting is that is something that just has no place really in professional philosophy now. It's not really discussed, but it was such a big area of concern for a number of ancient writers, Greek, kind of Roman, and some of the the great writers of the age. So I think that's fascinating. And I think while I don't love the philosophy of friendship necessarily, I think we need maybe not philosophy of friendship, but some real thinking about the nature of friendship. I think it's not something that we're as good at as I think we think we are, if that makes sense. Yeah, no. And certainly if you read a lot of kind of older texts, of a great deal of variety, people talk about friendship in a way that I just think doesn't necessarily make sense for us now. And I think there are a lot of kind of the ills of our age that we could see some real progress on with better friendship. So whether it's mental health, or kind of whether it's cohesion in a society, or a bunch of different things. I don't know if reading Cicero on friendship is going to get you there, but I think it's at least worth our consideration.
Also, I looked up about Mark. Well,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Let's hear about Marky Mark.
So 2 of his major felonies I can't actually repeat.
On the air?
Oh,
No,
they're quite...
Yeah. They're actually really bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first one is a lawsuit against the civil rights, and the next one is he actually served 45 days in jail, but was sentenced to 2, but only served 45. And the next one, okay, they're pretty much both 3 cases. Yeah, so there's 3 cases of him beating up people.
Okay.
And yes, he was in a gang.
Yeah.
But he has left the gang. Warburg said that his...
And to clarify, the gang wasn't the Funky Bunch, right?
No.
So he first relied on the guidance of his parish priest to turn his back on crime. He said that he told his street gang that he was leaving them and had some serious fights with them over it. So,
yeah. Wow.
He also has a petition to pardon because he does now have a felony.
Yeah.
Permanent felony record. Yeah.
Which is quite limiting, particularly in the US.
Isn't that if Damien got a felony record, he can't go to the US?
Something along those lines. I'm not an expert in immigration
from watching
law.
the Border Patrol.
Yeah, it's certainly
like
something along those lines, and I know that kind of certainly like drug convictions are a pretty big deal if you wanted to visit the US.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned you're a bit of a movie fan.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite movies
then? Some of my favorite movies. So, maybe my favorite movie is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Which is like a 90s movie by the Coen brothers, starring George Clooney. Set in the Depression, he's like escaping off a chain gang. Brilliant soundtrack, really funny sort of stuff as well. I like quite a few Coen brothers movies actually, but for me they're kind of like 50-50 hit and miss. I like a lot of Guillermo del Toro films, so my favourite of his is probably Pan's Labyrinth, which I think is just remarkable.
That one always spooked me as a kid.
I mean, it's spooky, but it's like, it's brilliant. And it's like, I don't know, like, I think it's quite philosophical as well. Like, I think you can do philosophy in so many ways other than reading philosophers.
Yeah.
So, like, film's a great way. Pan's Labyrinth asks really interesting questions, I think, about sort of the distinction between myth and reality, and the place of stories in our lives and things like that as well. What else do I like? I like a lot of Wes Anderson movies as well.
So is Roman.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite.
Yeah, nice.
I really love the directing style.
Yeah.
It's just such a pleasure to watch.
Oh, it's just beautiful.
It's so aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, you talk about aesthetic delight like we were before. So, yeah.
Have you seen the new show Chernobyl?
I have not.
That is so good. I just finished it last night. And
well, what did you love about it, Roman?
Everything. It is. Well, just to boast, it's the highest rated IMDb ever for a HBO show.
What is it, about
9.6 at the current moment.
Wow, okay.
And it is, first of all, it's correct historically.
Okay,
but
it's a big claim, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the reviews that I saw on IMDb were people who had actually said that they lived through that time.
Okay.
They were like 4 or 2 years old.
Sorry to interrupt, but you might want to explain it to the people who may not know what it is.
Chernobyl?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I can't spoil it because it happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, Chernobyl is a nuclear... so Chernobyl's a place, and it's also the name of the name of the facility, which is a nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
It was called like Vladimir First of Lenin, I think. It had some... They're all named that in the Soviet Union, and pretty much it exploded, which is pretty outstanding. Because usually they don't explode, they just go into meltdown.
Outstanding is in like remarkable, not as in fantastic.
Well, it's remarkable that they even accomplished that. But if you watch the show, you will learn how an RBMK reactor explodes. So I don't know anything about physics, but if you ask me what are the flaws of an RBMK reactor, I could give you a 10-page essay, easy peasy. It is incredible. It is some of the best story writing, I think, of this year, probably. Because it comes at a time where Game of Thrones ended, and that was terrible. So there's been such a void. It is terrible.
I haven't watched it, but yeah.
It is. Trust me.
I've only ever watched one episode.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I personally loved it, and then it ended, but it was a terrible ending. So I think there was a real void in the market for people who required something actually decent to watch.
Like a high quality drama.
Yeah, something could give them that form of closure, but in a different way. Which is kind of weird to say, but I think this really provided it. Because right after that, this amazing...
deliberate ploy by HBO, perhaps. You know,
Ooh,
kind of disappointing. No, I'm being completely facetious. I hope this doesn't... Don't turn this into a conspiracy theory.
The Game of Thrones terrible ending was not a ploy by HBO. It's a ploy by George R. R. Martin, the creator of the books.
What, so he can just, like, rest, finally?
No. It's so
that people actually read the books.
So what happened is that for the last season, he pretty much said to the directors, this is what I want the characters to end as for the show, and then that's it. That's all they
had
said.
to fill in the blanks.
And then they filled in the blanks, and of course they didn't do it very well because they only know how to adapt it. They're not actually good at writing it.
Sure.
So it didn't go out too well. But it's such a terrible ending that, of course, like I said before, there was really a void in the hearts of the fans that I reckon the thing that he wanted to do was to get people to read the books. And so that his other next 2 upcoming books will sell so much because people just want an ending for the story. It's actually decent.
So why is Chernobyl good, if you don't mind me asking?
It's so many different aspects. I don't know, this is going to test my
good acting, good...
The acting is incredible, especially from the main dude, which is...
Stellan's...
No.
Not that guy?
It's a different dude. His name is... The actual is Legasso, which is the actual dude's name.
Yeah, okay.
It's not like a changed name or anything. That was the man who worked on Chernobyl and trying to fix it. And it's just... It's a 5 hours, so there's only 5 episodes. It's a mini-series. And that was probably the best decision because that's all that was really needed. And they tell so many different aspects. For instance, there's the people in the actual control room, where that's the first episode, is it exploding, but it just explodes. But when you get to the last episode, you get to figure out why and what went wrong. And the question throughout the entire season is, was it the people in the control? Was it actually the system? Or was it a mixture? What was it? And by the end, you get that answer. But then, of course, throughout that, you get how they dealt with the largest and the first time humankind has ever seen an accident on this scale. Because they went in, they thought they were just dealing with a fire, but in reality it was emitting something like 15,000 rontgens of radiation, which is equivalent to 2 Hiroshima bombs. I think they explain it really well. This is another thing that I love about it, is that they explain nuclear physics so well. Because so the dude comes out and he says, we've detected 15,000 Rontgen. They're like, oh, what does that mean? It says that's 2 Hiroshima bombs every single hour, and it's been 40 hours. So yeah, there's a lot of. It's just the thing about it I love is that it's scary, in ways that it shouldn't be.
Is that the camera work doing that, or the music?
The ominous. It's just radiation. When you think about it, you can't see it. It just goes straight through you, and it does things to you you can't see, smell, or hear, and that's what's spooky about it. Especially when it has a segment of the military was employed to go in and clean up the area after they'd originally taken care of the reactor in itself. They had to tear up 2,600 square kilometers of land, cut down a lot of forest, and go in there and actually get rid of all the pets that were in the town. And that's where we follow one of the characters just going around with a gun, having to shoot all the pets.
Yeah.
But he's just going into
stressing.
It's just stressing, but him walking around in a ghost town is so scary. And I'm thinking, why am I so scared? Like, nothing bad's going to happen. I mean, of course there is radiation, but it's not that bad. But yet again, and then the dude says, just go check into the homes if there's any dogs or anything. And you're on the edge of your seat, but you don't even know why.
I mean, if it can do that to you, then it must be pretty good.
I mean, everyone's saying it's great, and I think it is. Yeah.
All right, well, we are approaching the end of time, so I think Roman has one final question for you, Mr. Kendell.
Okay.
Oh, was that it? Time?
Or unless you want to bring up something.
No, we won't. Okay. Okay.
All right, yeah.
Final question.
Okay.
It is personal.
We do this with every podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you could be any component of an aircraft, what aircraft component would you be, and why?
Now, I have heard you ask this question, so I did put a little bit of thought to it.
Okay.
But not enough thought to it to actually find out the real name. But so for instance, when you're on you're on a plane, you're on a flight, and like during the flight, the like the stewards and stewardesses, like they come up and down the aisles with the trolley.
The trolley with all the like snacks.
Yeah, and they kind of give you your snacks and your drinks or kind of whatever else. I think I'd be the trolley. Yeah, I mean, I think life kind of fundamentally, and there's more to it obviously, but one of the fundamental parts of life and living well is serving others. And so I think that's more than just giving them snacks and drinks. Yeah. But, if we extrapolate that principle perhaps, so I think if I was condemned to a lifetime or as a part of an aeroplane, I'd want to be a part of that.
That's pretty good.
That's a good answer.
Because when I'm on the airplane and I see the trolley, I get pretty excited.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's another reason perhaps why you might want to be that. I feel like that's not me. That it's like, oh yeah, I just want people to be excited when they see me coming. Although it's not really something I experience. So, yeah.
All right, well, Thank you for listening. There's been an After Hours podcast. Thank you for coming on.
No, thanks for having me, gents. It's been an honour.
Yeah, all right. See you.
Thank you.